I think that we are live. Is that right? Just confirming with technicians. Yes, we are live, right? Excellent. So good morning, everyone. It is our pleasure to welcome all participants and panelists to this session of on SDG localization and voluntary local reviews in ASEAN within the ASEAN Forum for Sustainable Urbanization. It is, for those that don't know me, I am Martino Miraglia, and I do coordinate the team on SDG localization within the UN Habitat headquarters in Nairobi. And I have the pleasure to be your moderator today and to welcome you to this great session. We have a very beautiful and interesting list of speakers that will present us their experience and tell us a bit more from both a regional perspective, but also country perspective, how SDG localization and voluntary local reviews are advanced. I will introduce speakers as I present them, but before, so to not waste too much time because we have a tight agenda. Before getting into the clue of our session, just a few words from my side in saying how the SDG localization has never been so important and so central as it is right now. You probably all know that the Secretary General of the United Nations has launched in 2020 the Decade of Action to achieve the SDGs to accelerate actually achievement of the SDGs by 2030. And in this Decade of Action, local action is identified as one of the key levels of interventions to achieve the SDGs. In this effort to advance local action, we have witnessed in the past months and years how voluntary local reviews can be really a powerful accelerator of this process, as they touch upon many dimensions of development. Voluntary local reviews are not only, UN Habitat doesn't see voluntary local reviews only as reports. They are a process where communities are engaged, where communities can share their priorities, where the dialogue happens among departments of local administrations, and when policy coherence is enhanced with national strategic frameworks for sustainable development. And so local voluntary local reviews can be a very important tool for achieving the SDGs within the Decade of Action. As UN Habitat, we do support them also in partnership with some of the partners that you will hear here today during this session through the formulation of guidelines and direct technical support to cities. In addition, voluntary local reviews are really part, and we consider them as part of our corporative and comprehensive approach to SDG localization. That includes also the Global Urban Monitoring Framework and SDG cities. But I will be happy eventually to talk a bit more about it if needed. I will, if the speakers are ready, I will gladly start this panel and share the floor with our first guest, Samiuddin Ahmed, program specialist of the Environment and Development Division within UNESCAP. Sami, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Martino. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here today to speak on the regional scale of SDG localization here at the ASEAN Sustainable Urbanization Forum. I'd like to start off by reiterating, Martino, and say once again that the Decade of Action recognizes cities and local authorities as critical actors in accelerating the implementation of the SDGs. And it's not the first time the importance of the urban context has been emphasized in policy debates. So the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has also highlighted the critical part local leaders and city governments play in action for the SDGs through their role in basic service delivery, affordable housing, economic and community development, environmental protection, and infrastructure investments. So without any further delay, let me jump into my presentation here by giving a brief look at how the Southeast Asia sub-region is doing in terms of achieving the SDGs. Next slide, please. Thank you. So overall, the Asia-Pacific region is not on track to achieve the SDGs by the year 2030. The Southeast Asia sub-region in particular achieved significant progress on several goals, notably goals 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9, as you can see on the right of the screen here. But progress was very slow for goal 7, goal 11 on sustainable cities and communities, which is of particular concern to us here in this forum, as well as goals 12 and 15. And more worryingly, the sub-region is regressing on the achievement of goals 13, 14, and 16. In terms of SDG localization, efforts are overall mixed in the region. Local governments have made significant progress in raising awareness and aligning local plans with the SDGs. However, in instances where cities are operationalizing the SDGs, localization appears to be a bit of an afterthought, with SDGs sometimes tacked on to existing projects and activities. Next slide, please. The previous one. Thank you. From UNESCAP, we have several concrete programs of support in place to support cities from the region to achieve their goals of localizing the SDGs. We have been focusing heavily on the voluntary local reviews, which, as Martina had mentioned earlier, it has gained significant momentum in the past few years to foster SDG localization and demonstrate local government's capacity and commitments. We also have projects targeting marine plastic pollution, sustainable urban resource management, amongst many others. And together with UN Habitat and United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, in cooperation with the United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, and Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, ESCAP supports the functioning of the Asia Pacific Mayors Academy, which provides courses for chief executives of cities to build their capacities to develop and implement sustainable urban solutions in their communities in support of the new urban agenda, as well as the 2030 agenda. Next slide, please. So focusing specifically on our work on urban resource management, ESCAP recently concluded a project that aims to strengthen local government and key urban stakeholders' capacity to implement the 2030 agenda in the area of urban resource management by supporting the process of collaborative and adaptive urban governance through multi-stakeholder coalitions, integrated analysis and planning through systems approaches, and evidence-based decision-making using data, information, analysis, and dissemination. Through this project, we introduced the Sustainable Urban Resource Management Framework, or the SURM framework, which integrates the 3 pillars of sustainable development and is comprised of 5 phases, as you can see on the screen here. And this project was piloted in 5 cities in the region, with 3 from the Southeast Asia sub-region, and they are Battambang in Cambodia, Nadi in Thailand, and Naga City in the Philippines. And I'll be sharing details of the project as a link in the chat box for those who are interested to know more. Next slide, please. On voluntary local reviews, ESCAP's work started last year with the development of the regional VLR guidelines, which was followed with the piloting of the guidelines in 6 Asia-Pacific cities, with 4 from the Southeast Asia sub-region. So we have piloted the guidelines in Subang Jaya in Malaysia, Surabaya in Indonesia, Nakhon Si Thammarat in Thailand, and Naga City in the Philippines. So the first VLR report coming out of the pilot was that of Subang Jaya City, which was launched at the HLPF in July of this year. And we expect the final reports from the other pilot cities to be launched soon as well. And the guidelines really build on existing resources produced by IGES, Brookings Institution, UCLG, and others. And it's the first VLR-focused knowledge product that takes into account the specificities of a particular region. And we have designed it to be simple and straightforward, contains useful examples, checklists, and templates. And we believe it can be a very practical addition to any local policymaker's VLR toolkit. Next slide, please. So, responding to the need for better integration between local and national SDG review processes, we have dedicated an entire chapter in the VLR guidelines focusing on VLR-VNR integration. And strengthening VLR-VNR integration can serve numerous benefits. Namely, it can fill any existing information gaps. It can, of course, enhance vertical and horizontal coordination. It can broaden stakeholder engagement. And it can, VLR-VNR integration could also, for local governments in particular, strengthen the legitimacy of subnational or local follow-up and review of the SDGs. And this in turn could validate local governments' future requests for support from the national government regarding SDG implementation. Next slide, please. Thank you. So recent voluntary national review reports have showcased many subnational government or local government-led best practices around the SDGs. And these VNR reports also highlight 4 actions that can form the basis of effective VLR-VNR integration as we see it. So we have identified the first set of actions or top-down actions to take place at the national level, where national government fully integrates the findings, the data and information collected from VLRs within the VNR and uses the VLR to engage wider and more diverse stakeholders as part of the local consultation process within the overall VNR process. The second set of actions, or the bottom-up actions, take place at the local level, where local governments use previous VNRs as a reference to develop their VLR and actively pursues the VLR process as an avenue of addressing structural issues that they face, but do not have the mandate to respond to. And of course, there are several actions that we see national and local governments can consider when trying to integrate the two processes. Firstly, there could be a national mechanism to support and consolidate the VLRs. Secondly, there could be the VNR timetable could be designed and communicated in a way that allows local governments to actually inform the VNRs. And thirdly, designing the VNRs and VLRs as an interconnected stakeholder engagement mechanism. And this would really allow both national and subnational governments to reap the benefits of deeper integration. So national governments, for example, instead of passively waiting for local governments to conduct a VLR, can really take steps to enable such process to be integral part of the VNR process and bring on board different stakeholder groups from their respective localities. And for local governments, such a multi-stakeholder, territory-based approach would enhance the validity, the depth, and the legitimacy of the VLR. Next slide, please. So the everything is connected mantra is also reflected in the two processes I just talked about. So both the SURM and the VLR processes are highly complementary, and they contribute to SDG monitoring and reporting at the local level. So as you can see on the screen here, the sum of the SURM framework's building blocks indicate where the VLR process and the SURM framework are closely aligned, and could be considered as an entry point to link both processes. And this is not so surprising, as both processes promote inclusive, data-driven, and evidence-based decision-making, and can be used to plan policy actions. Next slide, please. And finally, before I hand back to Martino, I'd like to mention that more information about these two processes can also be found online. As we have recently developed e-learning courses focusing on sustainable urban resource management as well as the VLR. And once again, I'll be sharing links to both in the chat box for everyone's reference. Next slide, please. And that's it from my end. Thank you very much for your time. I know that I rushed through it a bit, but I'll be happy to respond to any questions that anyone might have through the chat box. Thank you, Martin. Over to you.
Thanks a lot to you, Sami, and thanks indeed for keeping the time. And one thing that really resonated is, and that you have highlighted, is this importance of connecting voluntary local reviews and national reviews, and more generally of finding alignment and integration between the efforts happening at local level to monitor and implement the SDGs and what happens at national one. And beyond voluntary national reviews, we do really think that national development frameworks and policies should really include the dimension of localizing, especially when it comes to delivery of development policies. So thanks for underlining that, and congrats again for the extent of your work, which is not only a lot, but very practical and oriented to provide local governments with concrete guidance on how to advance their VLR and SDG localization work. I'm pretty sure that our public found your presentation very useful, and I invite them all to visit the ESCAP website. And in that sense, maybe something that I should have said at the very beginning for participants attending, please do not hesitate to include your questions in the chat. You don't have the possibility to turn on your cameras, but the chat, the comment box is really there for you to interact with us and include your chat. Include your comments and questions. We will take them on board if time allows during the panel discussion. Thank you a lot again, Sami. I'm now switching to the second of our panelists and of our presenters, Madam Anisa Osman, Director of Planning Department in Sha'alam City Council. Madam Osman will present us the key practical case of today's session, which is Sha'alam work on SDG localization and voluntary local use. Madam, the floor is yours.
Distinguished moderator, Mr. Martino, speakers, panelists, and audience, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. I'm TPR Aniza, Planning Director of Sha'alam City Council. First of all, thank you very much to Secretariat in inviting Sha'alam City Council to participate and sharing experience on preparing our VRR report. Before we deep dive into the topics, next slide please. Next slide. No. Not this slide. No, I think this is the one end slide. No. Okay, yes, sorry. Okay, so next slide please. Okay, so before we deep dive into the topic, I would like to share basics information and background of Sha'alam. Sha'alam is a capital city of Selangor State, and we City Council as a caretaker of the township. Total land area is around 303 square kilometers, and currently our population is around 670,000 people. Next slide. We have the vision in transforming Sha'alam into a vibrant, conducive and renowned city. We are committed to the sustainable development principle since 1998, and then continues to recent SDGs and New Urban Agenda Commitment. Next slide. Sha'alam has started our VLR journey at 2020 with our SDGs Roadmap. Sha'alam is the first city in Malaysia to produce SDGs Roadmap. We launched it during the 10 Sessions World Urban Forum Abu Dhabi on 13 February 2020, just before pandemic of COVID-19 come back the world. Based on our finding in SDGs Roadmap report, there are several challenges we have to overcome. It's such as a public transport network, footpath encroachment, industrial logistic, high property rates, social responsibility, flood risk, and so on. In next slide, in preparing SDGs roadmap, firstly we use existing supporting document such as local plan report, MBSA strategic plan, local agenda 21, and also state programs. Second is stakeholder engagement. Our SDGs roadmap is divided in two phases based on priority. Phase 1 have 5 SDGs, involve SDGs 11, SDGs 1, SDGs 12, 13, and 15. As a local authority, we noticed that SDGs 11, sustainable cities and communities, is closely and related to our rural jurisdiction. And then for phase 2, we continue the others SDGs closely and partially related to the SDGs 11 target. Next. In VLR report, we identify 5 principle is people, place, prosperity, peace, and partnership. 5 focus goal and 10 key initiative. Next. Sha'alam City Council will utilize the VLR to set a leading example in the integrations of the SDGs and the new urban agenda in a systematic approach to sustainable and inclusive urban development. Through involvement, transparency, and cooperative stakeholders, we aim to use international and local support to realizing the goal of sustainable in Sha'alam by 2030. Next. We recently announced our VLR report last 3 months ago at high level political forum on 13 July 2021 by our Mayor of Sha'alam, Datuk Zamani Ahmad, through visual online. Next. This is our Sha'alam VLR report and public can access and also can download at website. Next. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, just want to share success story and Sha'alam engagement at international level. We we participate in UN Habitat conference. Also participate in sharing session with United Cities and local government Asia Pacific. Next. Also with Escape APEC Japan. Next. With APOF and also we partnership project with Asian SDGs, frontrunner cities, and also with ASUS. Next. And then we also organize side event at World Urban Forum Abu Dhabi last year. So we have a committed team and get full support from high level management. The strong belief and support by them will help us success in implementing the SDGs toward 2030. The combination of challenges, opportunities, and strength has provided a solid ground for us. Now it's time for action at all levels: community management, stakeholders, business, industries players, and all of us. With that, I end up my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Osman. This is the experience of Sha'alam. I think it's an inspiration, has been and will continue to be an inspiration for many local and regional governments, not only in the region but globally. Let me pick up on your last point, which is it's time for action at all levels. Indeed, it is. We need to accelerate achievement of the SDGs within a decade of action and the exercise of planning, transforming projects and integrating the SDGs with the new urban agenda that you are putting forward within Sha'alam through the experience of the VLR is really a good example that I hope many local and regional governments will be able to follow. You have mentioned a few times your work at the international level and within the World Urban Forum. I was able and let's say lucky to participate in that session. Let me just take the opportunity to remind you all that we are going to have the 11th session of the World Urban Forum next June 26th to the 30th in Katowice, Poland, where SDG localization and voluntary local reviews will have a central role in the debate. So I will invite you all to not only think about replicating the session that you have organized, but to engage your stakeholders and local communities to participate. Thanks a lot, Madam Osman. And we have now ended up, let's say, finished with the first part of our session. We start with the second one, with the panel debate. We have a very interesting panel with Miss Annie Ismail from the Sha'alam City Council, Dr. Vivi Yulasvati from the National Secretariat of SDGs Indonesia, and Ms. Agnesa Sari, Regional Project Manager at UCLG ASPA. This is for the panelists as well as for the public. I would like to make this panel as much interactive as possible. So for the public that is attending, please don't hesitate again to include your comments in the chat so that we can keep the discussion very lively. So Miss Annie Ismail is the Senior Assistant Director to the Sustainable Development Unit within the Department of Planning at Sha'alam City Council. And following up a bit also on the presentation that we just heard from Ms. Osman, what is the reason that pushed Sha'alam to pursue the VLR process and the SDG roadmap? And what is the added value that as a local and regional government do you see in undertaking such a process as in adopting the SDGs as the core framework for your development planning? Over to you, Annie. Again, as we mentioned, if we can pick the response short so that we can have a different round of questions, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Annie, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, Martino. Sorry, everybody. Well, actually, I have a slide to better describe and answer a question by Martino. Basically, we in Sha'alam has started the agenda, sustainable development journey as early as 1998. So we started our local agenda at starting 2000, and we've been continue the program and implement in Sha'alam. But in next slide, please. Yeah, so you can see our journey from 2000 until today. So in 2015, we start to embark on this LCCF, Low Carbon City Framework, with Malaysian governments under the Ministry of Energy. So starting from there, we start to develop a very good networking with others country also. I would say that this LCCF has led us more than 10 SDGs without we realizing it. And also we have a network with the international collaborations with we participate with APEC program, and also we've been choose as the frontrunner city. So from that point, with the IGES in 2018, that is the starting point where Sha'alam think that we should go for the VLR, because we have to admit this we've been doing it before we realize it, but we never document it properly. So that's why when we've been selected as ASEAN SDG frontrunner, we start to write and start to report under the program. Then we submit the report. Then we start together with the urbanists to start to start to initiate our report for the VLR. And finally, in last July, we managed to submit and present our report in the high-level political forums meeting, and yeah, we successfully present our reports. So the added value that we learn from our VLR is that VLR is a commitment and a challenge to our city. Next slide, please. And we have been talking about the sustainability in Malaysia since the 70s. So we need to be bold and commit ourselves and start to challenge our city. So we need to initiate collective local actions. We need the baseline data. I'm sure everyone here know the hustle to gather the data from different stakeholders and agency. We must be more creative and get engagement with our stakeholders, especially during this pandemic. So in Sha'alam, we work together with urbanists, trying to make ourselves creative to gather the data so that we can produce the VLR report. With VLR also, we can share to the world and become the global attention. I'm sure not many of you here know about Sha'alam before this. Malaysian mostly knows our own capital, Kuala Lumpur. By the way, we just 45 minutes from Kuala Lumpur. Please do come to Sha'alam when we can travel again back later. So what we learned from this journey that we can become creative in the collaborating mechanism somehow. We must go via both the bottom-up approach and as well as the top-down approach. We use the vertical and integration to make sure our project continues. It is a common problem. If you don't start with the city's roadmap. So before VLR, I strongly believe that we need a roadmap so that we can plan and we can use the roadmap as our action plan. City roadmap and VLR are the mechanism for the national or the country to implement and monitoring the SDGs. So thanks to urbanists for this brilliant mechanism so that we can sustain, and we also hope that we can produce the VLR report next year and continue, because we already have the good foundation. Well, we don't have to be a silo effect anymore. We really need to break this one, regardless whether it is the international departments or among the stakeholders. There are people claim that they know everything and try to be defensive on their territory. We call them Mr. Know Everything. Please be more open, especially we in the government sector. So we learn a lot actually when we just want to produce one report, but we learn a lot and we change a lot. So we really need this VLR to my friends from other cities, from other local authority. We really need to be more visible to the stakeholders and our communities in order to get boards in this beautiful journey. So this actually is a very good foundations. So let's start doing the VLR, my friends. That's all. Martino?
Thanks a lot, Annie. Thank you very much indeed, and lots of things that resonate, and the process that you have been doing is quite extensive, touching really upon all dimensions of what our local and regional government can do and deliver for sustainable development. You have mentioned the hustle of data. And I know how difficult this can be. We have and how this is important to plan ahead in an informed and evidence-based way. Let me turn now the word to Dr. Vivi Ulaswati. I hope that I pronounced well your name. My apologies. Head of the National Secretariat of SDGs. It is our pleasure now today to have this real panel that takes into consideration all, let's say, spheres of action. We have a local and regional government representative, a national one, and a representative on association. So really, we can hear voices from all different spheres. Ms. Ulaswati, how do you, in the difference of Indonesian territory, with the 34 provinces, more than 17,000 islands, how did you manage to spread the word about sustainability? And how do you push for your territories to engage into sustainable development? Can you tell us a bit about your process and what you're doing to do so? Thank you.
Thank you, Martino, for the question, and thank you also for having me in this important panel. The way to localizing SDGs in Indonesia is based on the Presidential Decree number 59, 2017. And based on that, we develop what we call as a Sdgs Roadmap toward 2030, and also the National Action Plan. We are now in the process of revising for following the period of the midterm development plan. So we are now in the process of revising National Action Plan for 2021-2024. Based on this, we also push the local government to revise their provincial action plan that have been enacted in 30 provinces to be revised. That's one thing that so by doing that, we could mainstreaming the targets and indicators. For example, in the national midterm development plan, we mainstream around 124 targets out of 169 targets to be targets and indicators of program and activities. So by yearly, all the ministries could follow the budget to really incrementally to achieve the targets. Likewise, at the local level, having the provincial action plan, they have mainstream some of the SDGs indicators to be programs to be part of the indicators of their programs as well. Other things that we have is formalizing the um, metadata. We are just released the second editions. This metadata provide definitions, the way to do the survey, and also some methodology in which direct the local government to understand about the targets and indicators. Other things that we also did, particularly in relate to the VNR, that for last July we reported for the third time, is involving all the platform of the SDGs participation. So it's not only the government and local government, but also other stakeholders, including the parliament, CSO, philanthropy, and the businesses, as well as the academia and experts. So with all this network, we work together, not only developing or formalizing the VNR, but actually it is along the line with the process VSR and also the VLR formulations, which supported by the UCLG, Association of Municipalities, and the SDG Centers network, some which located in local universities. So I would say that the last process of the VNR is really inclusive, because not only the involvement but also the enthusiasm due to the theme of the last VNR is about the resilience recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And in fact, there are many initiatives and works at the local level and other stakeholders that want to be included in the report. So that's why our last VNR consists two books actually, with the annex of the not only the data but also the best practices. We receive around 200 best practices, and in complementing, we keep the VSR and VLR. However, we include some of the findings of the VSR and VLR in our VNR. So that's including some innovations done by the local and provincial governments in the SDGs, as well as some progress they made. And there are some review that revealed the enabling environment that allow the local government to actively pursue the SDGs implementation. It also identified the local innovations to overcome the institutional and local barriers to SDGs implementation, as well as the current and future challenge. I will stop here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Madam Ilaswati. I think this is very, I mean, the experience of Indonesia is quite exceptional. And I want to pick up on on one word that you mentioned, is the word network and inclusiveness. The fact that you have been working really in gathering stakeholders from different levels, different sectors, in contributing to the national effort to advance the SDGs. And this is quite interesting, valuable, and we truly believe this is the way ahead, specifically including local stakeholders in the processes that national level is doing in reporting on SDG advancements. With that concept, I would say, also picking up on your mentioning of voluntary subnational reviews, I would like to turn the floor to Agnès Sari, regional project manager from UCLG ASPAC. And in that sense, I think that we have seen that, Agnès, some of the ASEAN countries in the region are falling behind on some SDG targets. Within the strategy of UCLG ASPAC, what do you think can be the role of local and regional of the Association of Local and Regional Governments in supporting their members in advancing the SDGs, and eventually also connecting with the efforts happening at national level, and what UCLG ASPAC is doing in that sense? Over to you, and thank you.
Thanks, Martino. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Bernadia, the UCLG ASPAC Secretary General, as she has a sudden engagement. While answering your question, Martino, UCLG ASPAC support and accelerate the progress of cities and local governments in attaining the SDGs by bridging the connection of local and regional governments with relevant stakeholders. So, to address knowledge and information gaps, such as by convening various types of forums, events, and capacity buildings, such as through various themes of webinars, matchmaking events, coaching clinics, including the ASEAN Mayors Forum. On climate change, we also work at ASEAN level through GCOM Southeast Asia. UCLG ASPAC also do evidence-based advocacy to increase awareness and tangible actions of local and regional governments to be more progressive in attaining the SDGs, while supporting them through pilot projects that can be scaled up at the local level, as well as encouraging the local and regional governments for city-to-city cooperation to go hand in hand in attaining the SDGs.
Fantastic. Thank you, Agnieszka. And again, I think that the work that you have been doing in training is quite relevant, because the capacities of local governments, I think that is one of the key points that we want to take into consideration while building an SDG advancement roadmap at local level. Let's keep this lively. And Annie, I'm coming back to you again. We have seen how from Indonesia the networking efforts have been done, how UCLG ASPAC is promoting training. One of the key questions here, especially when coordinating with national level but also at local level, is policy coherence. How do we connect the different strategies? In Sha'alam, you have different ones, Smart and Safe City, the ASUS project. So how do you make sure that all these initiatives, all these strategies and plans come together coherently? And is the VLR helping you in doing so? Over to you, Annie. Please, 2-3 minutes so that we can have a last round of discussion for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, Martino, as the first city in Malaysia to submit the VLR using the Malaysia SDG network, we use the Malaysian SDG cities as reference. Our framework actually exercise a 3-stage. As you know, I think Puan Aniza also emphasized, Madam Aniza also emphasized on the report how we prepare it. So we have the roadmap. So I guess the roadmap is our action plan. So I also before this mentioned how we have the roadmap and how the roadmap is actually guide us. So we by producing the roadmap, so we use that as our to synchronize and also to align with all the programs. In our roadmap, we already put all the priority in Sha'alam, what to do and what we are visioning in for Sha'alam in certain years. So that's why we align all the programs with ASUS and also in low carbon safe cities and others programs that come into Sha'alam in our action plan using the roadmaps, so that we hope that our roadmaps while we're doing it, so we can align and work together alongly with the program, so that we can sustain our project in the sustainable development. I think that's our key. Marino, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Annie. And this effort of making coherence and alignment is actually key. And turning back again to Madam Iluswati, you have mentioned you have done strides in making sure that this alignment happens also across levels. I'm again going back to the efforts that you put in collecting information. What is the added value for a national government such as Indonesia to get information, innovation from the local level? And why it is important for you to collect that kind of information? And in practical terms, This process of coordination with the local level, has it informed, was it useful to create plans and policies at national level that were actually informed and oriented towards the local level itself? Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, for Martino, for the question. I think when we're talking about the SDGs, it is about not only working in each goal or targets, but it's about the balancing the implementation between the social, economic, and the environment dimension. Meanwhile, many of us working, I would say, in silo because we focus only how to fulfill of each our work based on the performance-based requirement. So, in many cases, coordinations, collaborations, it's not easy to work at local level because everything's in silo. So harmonizing or fine tuning is not easy. But the beauty of the SDGs, because we are talking about the same goals, the same targets and indicators, we have somehow instrument to harmonize or to fine tuning all of the conflicting or the things that I mentioned earlier as a silo in the same platform of the movement as well as the agenda. So by having working together, particularly in Indonesia context, we are very decentralized. Uh, Working in the same agenda platform, which is also anchoring to the global agenda, we could identify about who doing work when when we're talking about one goal, for example, we always, in the roadmap, or sorry, in the action plan, we could identify what kind of programs could engage what, who are behind that, and we can clarify the tasks and monitor as well as measuring the progress, and also synchronize all of the reports, not only based on sectors but also based on the goals. We are now moving on the digitalizations of all those reports and the dashboard things, which could makes the works easier, hopefully, and also for faster in the future. So I think the challenge for localizing SDGs that I mentioned earlier uh, could come up in the area that pretty much new, like in a green economy or circular economy. So in this regard, those kind of platform could do interactive process, not only anchoring all of the progress for the data and the progress of the SDGs, but vice versa could inform and could be a knowledge hub from others. So everyone that no need to reinventing the wheel or doing from the scratch, but could learn from others from something that are new. I think the first speaker mentioned about the slow progress in our regions for goal 7, goal 11 as well, goal 12, and goal 15. I think these are pretty much new for many of us, including Indonesia, because Indonesia is not only Jakarta, but many places that really need delivering a knowledge and innovation in much faster way. So I think working fast, in interactive ways with the local governments, that's the best way that we could have to accelerate all the effort to achieve the SDGs goals in a timely manner. Over to you,
Thank,
Martina.
Thanks a lot, Madam Ilaswati. I think that Indeed, I mean, you have mentioned a few things, the platform and the interaction that is needed, and I hope that I think that you have also well replied to the question from Ms. Likia in the chat. So again, in case you have more questions, don't hesitate to put it in the comments. Let me turn to Agnieszka. Agnieszka, again, we have seen efforts from local and national government in putting the agenda forward. Thanks mainly to the work of UCLG, many national associations are embarking in the effort of voluntary subnational reviews, right? As we saw in Indonesia. What is, in your opinion, the added value of voluntary subnational reviews, and which is the role that they can play in connecting voluntary local reviews to voluntary national reviews? If you can articulate a bit more on that.
Yeah, thank you, Martino. So we think that the added value of the voluntary subnational review is the new perspective that is brought to the VNR, or voluntary national review. So rather than just having a single perspective from the national level, the inclusion of the voluntary subnational review to the VNR, or voluntary national review, provides the perspective of a collective voices of local and regional governments to the progress of SDGs, where local and regional governments who directly deals with the citizens having a very significant portion of roles for the SDGs attainment. As priorities of each local and regional governments are varied, depends on their characteristics and capacity, the VLR also enrich the perspective of the SDGs attainment at the country level, which opens up opportunity to advancing the ongoing efforts in accelerating the efforts in attaining the SDGs, such as has been shared by Sha'alam.
Thanks a
Over to
lot.
you.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Hari. I think this is indeed key, and the role of voluntary subnational reviews, I hope that is going to be strengthened more and more in the future, and it is really, in my view, a powerful tool to gather local perspectives and to make sure that the local perspectives are better included into national ones. I think that we are running out of time. It is already almost 9 in Nairobi, at least from my side of the world. The session is about to close, so I would like to really thank a lot the panelists, the presenters that have presented their experiences before this panel, the panelists that have animated this debate. I have the feeling that we could be here talking for 2 days, but we have only 1 hour. So from my side, I think that my takeaways are really the power of voluntary local reviews and of the action of local and regional governments is enhanced when this comes into a framework that includes cooperation horizontally with territorial stakeholders, but also vertically with national governments. This is the only way, from my point of view, to make sure that the localization of the SDGs and that the SDGs are implemented in a sustainable way, where we actually provide impact and make sure that the standards of the life of standards of our communities are enhanced. On that note, I would like to close this session. Again, thanking all the partners and the logistic team in the background that have done lots of effort to make sure that this goes very smoothly. Congrats to you all, and thanks for the participants for being here and to assist to this beautiful panel. Thanks again, and see you next time. Bye.